One dark night, a soldier was heard screaming, ordering him to seize the intruders and not let them go. Entering the house, the prince, crying out angrily, asks if there was an attack again, and he wonders where Teresa is now. Rowan is very worried. He quickly went to the room, which is on the second floor, and opening the door, Teresa screams. A beautiful girl with long silver hair turns to the guy and says Ratten. The worried prince asks Teresa if she is okay and if she was not hurt. A young girl looks with loving eyes at her boyfriend and tells him that she is completely fine. The guy can't calm down and screams, because how dare they threaten the crown prince's bride, and he will never leave it alone. Squeezing his palms in anger, the prince thinks, because first of all, it is necessary to find out who is behind all this. The guy calmed down a little and said that the attackers had probably already been caught, and they needed to be immediately taken to the palace and find out about everything. But suddenly, Duke Cedric enters the room and says that they killed everyone. The prince, expressing his dissatisfaction, asks Cedric how we will then find out who is behind all this and why they killed everyone. Cedric asks the prince in surprise, because he really has no idea who is behind all this, and he gives advice on the way home. Be careful, Your Majesty. The prince does not agree and says that this will not work, and turning to Cedric, orders him to find an exclusive magician for the Mayfield family. The guy with blonde hair screams, because how long will they endure all this? And turning to Rowan, he says that first of all, they must protect his fiancée and his sister. After all, this is the most important thing for him. Cedric angrily protests that this is not necessary and that the Mayfield family does not need magicians. The prince thought that he should do something differently because he recently found out about a good wizard and her name is Elena, and he thinks that she can be trusted. The Duke objects, and the prince asks him why Cedric is making such an expression on his face because it looks like he is trying to scare him, and standing behind Teresa, he says that he is not at all scared. When the Duke leaves the room, the prince, detaining him, says that he should know that Rowan is stubborn. Teresa, who heard this conversation, turning to the prince, says that he has known her since childhood, and therefore must understand her brother because he knows how much her brother hates magicians and how deep his wounds are. Teresa looks at the prince and says, after all, however, her brother protects and cares for her like no one else, and he need not worry. Rowan says that he understands everything, but no matter how well Cedric protects her, there is a limit to everything, and she could be in much more serious danger than today. The prince asked the girl to give him her hand, and he pulled a beautiful ring with a large diamond onto her finger and said that this was his mother's relic. Rowan says that he is very sorry because he cannot be there for Teresa all the time, because he has to protect her, and yet being the crown prince makes him feel pathetic. The girl, screaming, says that she asked him not to say that because in her eyes he is the best of all the princes. He heard the words Teresa said to him. The prince hugs her and says that she is the best girl for him. In the evening, the maid saw the mistress looking at the ring on her hand, saying that it was beautiful, and it was impossible to take her eyes off it. Teresa said Rowan treasures the ring very much. The maid demands that the mistress go to bed, because her skin should also rest, and after wishing good night, the servant left. At night, Teresa had a dream that Rowan had found a sorceress, and she cast magic on the ring, and, if she was in danger again, let her turn to the ring, and it would definitely protect her. And all she needs to say is, but suddenly, the girl wakes up. When Cedric was sleeping in his room at night, he also had a dream in which a little boy comes to his room and says that he must protect his sister. After this, Cedric wakes up, sweating, and hears screams because they were attacked. Entering the main hall, the Duke grabbed his sword and demanded that everyone go back and call the guards. Suddenly, Cedric saw his sister, who was grabbed by the hair by some witch and dragged along the floor. The witch, turning to the Duke with gloating, says that he has finally arrived, and in this case, they should arrange a special welcoming ceremony. The evil woman extended her hand with lightning towards the Duke, and he quickly found himself in another place. Cedric thought that there must be a reason why he was lured outside, because the magician was with the swordsman, and this alerted him. The sister who looked at all this was very worried, and turning to her brother, she told him to be careful. However, Cedric took the sword and was ready to fight. He thought that today's event would not be a welcoming ceremony, but their funeral. In an unequal battle, the Duke remained victorious, but suddenly cried out that his body was not moving. Teresa saw that her brother was in danger because he was wounded, and suddenly remembered that she could help him. Raising her hand and bringing it closer to her chin, the girl looked at the ring and quickly screamed out a fireball. Suddenly, a large fireball flashed from the sky, and the witch screamed in surprise because this couldn't be happening. and you ask with concern what kind of magic this is. The fireball absorbed all the magic of the evil witch in a matter of minutes. The witch felt that she was not so strong, and her magic was losing power. She turns to her servants and screams that they are retreating. A worried Teresa approaches her wounded brother and asks if he is okay. Cedric, calming her down, says, "Since everything is fine with Nevo, then don't let her worry. The girl can't calm down because her brother is wounded." Cedric is concerned because he wonders what kind of magic it was. Teresa said that the ring was given to her by Rowan, and there is magic in it. The girl says that the prince said to use the ring if she is in danger. Suddenly, Teresa saw that an unknown man was approaching her brother with a sword in his hands, and she opened it, warning her brother that he was in danger from behind. Before Duke had time to turn around, he sees that the man is losing strength and falls unconscious. Cedric asks what just happened. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a beautiful girl with long red hair appears in front of them and asks what kind of mess is going on here. The lady looks at them and says that the payment for Mrs. Elena will have to be doubled. A few days ago, life flowed smoothly in the magic tower, but suddenly, shouts were heard that if she received a request, she should do the job properly. After all, the only one who can anger Mrs. Tolt so much is the magician Elena Rata. Mrs. Tolt screams, turning to Elena, because how could she think about returning the fee for such a big request? Because she doesn't understand what a good chance this is for her. The head of the magic tower, Tolt, orders the girls to immediately return to the client and apologize, and ultimately take responsibility for the order. Elena, sitting on a chair in her office, asks the head of the magic tower a question, and whether she thinks that a magician with such skills as hers is obliged to do this. The girl with red hair continues to say that the payment for completing the order is too small, and she has absolutely no motivation to fulfill this order. The surprised Mrs. Tolt adjusts her glasses and tells the girl to remind her what her debt is. After all, the fee for her work is 100,000 gold coins. Mistress asks Elena if she has regained her motivation. Tolt demands that the girl return to the client to do the work, and only after that she can return. Elena, leaving the director's office, thinks that the lady is indulging her in her duty, but this is low. Suddenly, a girl with red hair heard that her covenant was the magician Rowan, and he asked a question that, judging by her facial expression, Tolt was nagging her again. Hearing these words, Elena became even more angry and replied that the lady was already tired of her reproaches. The magician asks Elena to stay a little longer, but the girl replies that she is in a hurry because she has a lot to do. Rowan asks if she will really walk again because she doesn't want to waste her jewelry. The magician says, however, to go down from the 100th floor to the 1st because it will take a lot of time, and it seems she was saying that she was in a hurry. The guy asks if he can help her. The magician approaches Elena, takes her in his arms, and quickly descends with her to the 1st floor. After they arrived, Elena said with pleasure that it was great, and Rowan turned out to be quite useful. As she leaves, the red-haired girl turns to the magician and says that she envies him because his conductor is oxygen. In order to use magical powers, all wizards on Earth use a conductor. It can be some kind of object or living creature, depending on the characteristics of the conductor. It can be permanent or one time. Elena's guide is a jewel, because before entering the magic tower, she was the daughter of a rich merchant. At this time, getting jewelry that served as a guide for her was not a problem. However, when the red-haired girl's seed went bankrupt, everything changed. The merchant ship on which Elena's parents went on business encountered a storm, and as a result, the ship ended up underwater. The red-haired girl was left alone, and with a debt of 100,000 gold coins. Naturally, such a sum is an unbearable burden for a 10-year-old child, given that the monthly subsistence minimum for commoners is 10 gold coins. Elena understood that she had to find a way to pay and get rid of this burden. She knew that after the rain, a rainbow always comes, and after tears of happiness, because the red-haired little girl had magic, and therefore the people from the magic tower took on her duty and took her in, on the basis that the debt will be repaid from profits received in the future. All the towers believed that Elena would be able to earn big money, and as soon as she had a strong source of mana. However, if they knew about this, that her guide was jewelry, they would never even think about taking her with them. The magician Elena worked hard for 10 years, but she was only able to pay 30,000 gold coins. Rowan, understanding the complexity of this situation, says that she needs to work for another 10 years. The girl says that she left. The guy sees that Elena is opening the door, and he asks in surprise where she is going this time. The girl replies that she is going to work. The red-haired girl thanks the guy and says that she owes him. because she can't believe that she, a great wizard living on the 70th floor, asks for help from her younger colleague in order to go down to the very bottom. Because each floor corresponds to the level of the magician. By performing such an action, Elena understands that she should not waste jewelry on such trifles. Walking along the street in the capital of the empire, the girl wonders whether Mrs. Elena should really humiliate herself so much for little pay, and how Tolt could order her to do this. Suddenly, the girl's thoughts are interrupted by a push in the back, and she, angry, asks if the guy will just walk past him by pushing the person. An unfamiliar guy asks the girl for forgiveness, and suddenly she noticed that his belt was decorated with precious stones. Elena realized that this unfamiliar young gentleman was from a family of aristocrats. Judging by this, he walks accompanied by a security guard. The girl, sighing heavily, thought that she was jealous of him because this boy never worried about money. After walking a few meters, the girl felt magical power because it was strong enough. Judging by all this, some magician is hunting the young master. The red-haired girl's friend thought that if she helped him, he would be able to generously thank her with gold coins. When the prince was returning home, he was attacked and his guards were destroyed. The prince, in a rage, asks the robber whether the Empress ordered him, but the robber replied that he had no need to know because he would soon die. The villain pulled out a knife and wanted to harm the prince, but suddenly he was stopped by Elena's magic, which dissolved him in the air. Elena thought, this is enough for the prince to thank her generously. She went down to the ground and, turning to the guy, said that he was really in danger. The worried prince asks who she is. The red-haired girl says that if she had not saved him, something irreparable could have happened. I asked for forgiveness because I didn't introduce myself and said my name Elena. The girl in the green dress, turning to the prince, says that if he decided to thank her for saving him, then she would not mind at all. The prince thought she was a fraud. The red-haired girl continues to say that if he does not have anything on him, then he can send a reward for saving the magic tower. When the prince heard that the girl was from the magic tower, he grabbed her hand and said that she looked so young, but had such incredible power. Says with pleasure that he was just about to go to the magic tower to make a request, and meeting her is real fate. After all, he was looking for a wizard like her. The prince explains to the girl that he needs an exclusive magician to protect his bride, and he asks her because the life of his fiancée is under threat. The girl asks first to let go of her hand, and suddenly she notices on the prince's hand a mana stone that cannot be obtained for any money. And the prince, seeing Elena's interest, says that his mother left him this relic, and this ring saved him more than once. The aristocrat gives the red-haired girl a bag of white gold coins, totaling 3,000 gold coins. Elena says, of course, that it would be impolite to refuse, because he wants to thank her. The prince offers the girl if she agrees to protect his bride, he will pay her 2 or maybe 4 times more. However, he can pay her as much as she wants. Elena thought that if she became an exclusive magician, she would be able to get a lot more money and immediately pay off her debt. After all, a bright, brilliant, and hopeful future awaits her. But the girlfriend remembered that Tolt always refused requests to become an exclusive magician for a certain family, and she is sure that this time the lady will be against it again. The red-haired girl asks the prince, because he said that his bride is in danger, because she, after all, also has a conscience, because he was generous to her, and therefore she cannot help but help him. But agreeing to such an action, the prince must contact the magic tower directly to obtain permission to hire a magician. After all, she cannot decide these issues on her own. Since the situation seems urgent, so Elena suggests casting a spell on the mana stone. After all, in this way, even an ordinary person will be able to use magic, and his bride will be able to use the ring at a dangerous moment. The prince asks a question, and if a situation suddenly arises in which his bride activates magic, she will be able to arrive immediately. The red-haired girl thought that in fact the power of the mana stone would not require her presence, and this was a great chance to make money. Elena currently says that she has one condition, and in exchange for her help, which will cost 6,000 gold coins. The Duke holds the sword near the face of the red-haired beauty and does not agree to the demand, because they do not need the help of the magician. Elena speaks calmly because she believes that this is gratitude to her for saving him, and she never would have thought that she would be rewarded in this way. Suddenly, Teresa screams and demands that her brother stop. After all, he is disrespecting the person who saved them. The doctor who examined the wounded man says that the wound turned out to be much more serious than he thought, and the Duke should not use his left hand for a while. Sitting over a cup of tea, Teresa got to know Elena better, and she apologized for her brother's behavior. The red-haired girl reassured her by saying that in fact the swords did not pose any threat to her. After all, the Duke was simply wounded, which is why he lost his mind, and she understands everything. Friend Teresa realized that the wizard who enchanted her ring was Elena. The girl in the green dress says that this is magic that not everyone can use, and the prince asked her to arrive at this moment if she was in danger. Meanwhile, a servant brought a bag of gold coins to Duke Cedric. The young aristocrat put a bag on the table in front of Teresa and said that there were 6,000 gold coins that she was talking about. Cedric, turning to the girl, says that she has done her job and therefore let her take the money and leave. Teresa thought that this might be enough of a blow, but it wouldn't do, and she feels that there is some kind of unpleasant aftertaste in her soul. The red-haired girl, turning to the Duke, says that if he needs an exclusive magician or some other help, then let him contact the magic tower. And finishing her conversation, she smiled sweetly. After listening to the conversation, the Duke angrily says, "After all, this was to be expected from people who are called wizards." Tired Teresa reports that it is time for her to leave, and turning to Elena, says that transport is waiting for her, and therefore she can get home comfortably. The magician Elena, thinking about the Duke that he received her help, and after that is already mischievous. A few days later, in the magic tower, Elena slept as usual in her room, which is on the 70th floor. But suddenly, a girl with bright red hair bursts into her room, and Elena screams. Sleeping Elena asks what it is since the morning. After all, she's going to sleep, so don't disturb her. A girl with red hair, the magician Melissa, screams that now is not the time to lie in bed because the sun has long risen. And Tolt immediately calls her. Elena angrily says that she will go crazy. And at the same time, she asks the question why the lady calls her so often. A red-haired girl, entering the director's office and seeing scattered books, asks in surprise why there is such an atmosphere here. Tolt in response asks a question because hasn't she said 1,000,000 times that magicians should not interfere in the affairs of aristocrats? And screaming, he says that Elena is casting magic on the Mana Stone. The lady claims that, in addition to this, she received 3,000 gold coins, if such a request is worth 50,000, and angrily asks if she is in her right mind. Elena says that this is not complicated magic at all, and there is nothing special about it. Tolt says with concern that the girl knows absolutely nothing about this world. However, the Duke's family wants to hire her as their exclusive magician. When Elena heard about this, she thought that the customer was Duke Cedric, and he asks in surprise if this is a joke. After all, this is simply impossible. To confirm her words, the lady shows the girl's documents for an official request. Reading the document, she asks the question why he did this, and what happens in the end. Tolt explains that this is the Mayfield family's request for her to become their exclusive magician for the whole year. Elena is worried about whether the lady will refuse this request. And why is she asking her opinion on this matter? Because the girl doesn't even know what to answer. Mrs. Tolt says that she must refuse, because being the exclusive magician for a family of aristocrats can be very dangerous. After all, even 10 people are not enough for this position. Exclusive magicians have to do all possible terrible and unpleasant things if an order was given. After all, this is precisely why the lady did not want Elena to become an exclusive magician. The red-haired girl, asking the mistress a question, asks why she didn't just refuse. And did they really promise to give her 100,000 gold coins? Tolt, justifying himself, says that naturally she is not doing this for money. Elena thinks that money is the reason for this situation. The Magic Tower has long witnessed the rise and fall of various empires and kingdoms. People have always wanted to get powerful wizards so that they could fight on their side. However, as a result, the magicians were divided into those who did not use magic for the benefit of any state and those who did it secretly. Over time, this division practically disappeared, and the members of the Magic Tower realized that the entire dispute was pointless. Since then, magicians have tried to remain neutral and stay away from politics. However, the reason why Tolt does not prevent you is that Elena will become the exclusive magician for the Duke's family. Of course, there is such a thing as, but the fact is that the Duke's family was greatly weakened by the Imperial family. And if this continues, the Empress will be able to seize all power, disrupting the peace in the country, which is already difficult to maintain. Due to the mysterious death of the eldest Duke of Mayfield, their family has lost power, but they still remain influential members of the aristocracy. The only thing that can hold back the Imperial family is the Mayfield family. Added strength to the Duke's family, they will be able to maintain balance with the Empress. Mrs. Toltz claims that she does not want to drag the girl into such a complex struggle for power. However, if Elena becomes the exclusive magician of the Mainfield family, then she will automatically be considered an opponent of the Empress. And the lady doesn't think that any problems will arise with her skills, however. However, nothing bad will happen if the girl refuses. The red-haired lady agreed to this job and did not hesitate for even a second. She did not quite understand what stories Mrs. Toltz was telling. However, 100,000 gold coins are true, because the girl thinks that she might even be able to increase the amount because gold is her life. When leaving the tower, other magicians came to say goodbye to Elena. Suddenly, the girl says that there is no need to bother and go out to see her off. The magicians hold the girl by the hands and tell her to take care of herself. Suddenly, the red-haired girl heard herself being asked if she was going to leave without saying goodbye to them. Magician Rowan and Magician Melissa, turning to Elena, ask her not to die and let her try not to succumb to her temper, but relying only on her skills, despite the fact that she has them perfect. Rowan looks at Elena and says that if she needs any help, she can ask at any time. The red-haired girl thanked everyone and wished them to live happily. Elena says goodbye to the tower in which she grew up and remembers the mistress's words that this work could turn out to be much more dangerous than they imagine. The girl convinces herself that everything will be fine because Mrs. Toltz knows about her abilities, and moreover, Elena is confident in herself. However, Elena remembered the words of Duke Cedric, and she really wanted to punch this arrogant aristocrat in the nose. The girl, entering the carriage, says that from now on she is not Elena the Deader magician from the Magic Tower, but the exclusive wizard of the Mainfield family, Mrs. Elena. A week has already passed since the magician Elena arrived in this family, not knowing if it was an accident or a coincidence, but as soon as she got here, the attacks suddenly stopped. The girls really liked all this because she had a huge room and luxurious food. Mainfield family estate turns out to be a peaceful place, but Elena feels guilty because she has been just having fun all week and eating all day long. Since the girl arrived there, she has never been able to see even a hairy, pompous peacock because that's what she thought of Cedric, and she was so determined to hit him in the nose. Elena thought that Duke Cedric was ignoring her very much, and that's why he hasn't shown up yet. The angry girl thinks that she needs to give a brilliant performance in order to wipe the nose of this peacock. But when the red-haired girl ate, her mood improved. Reflecting, she thought that she understood everything. Since people learned that Mrs. Elena would arrive here, it was natural that they were afraid. And nothing can be done, but she will just have to rest for a while. Out of idleness, Elena decided to inspect the house in which she lived. Entering the hall, the girl says that she knows that everyone is afraid of her. But having met no one except expensive things, a beautiful vase caught the girl's eyes because it looked expensive. Elena thought that if she sold this vase, she could pay off the entire debt at one time, and then she wouldn't have to work here for a whole year. Suddenly, the girl heard her name being called. Turning around, she saw a servant who I asked if she needed anything. Elena screams that she didn't mean to steal it, she was just watching. The girl was so nervous that if the servant did not pick up the vase, she dropped it. Elena thought that in just a little while she would probably get into another debt. The servant, turning to the red-haired girl, says, "Thank God she wasn't hurt." The girl thanks him because he saved her from another debt. The red-haired girl turns to the man and says that she wanted to ask him something. The man leaves, and Elena follows him down a narrow, dark corridor. She realizes that the estate has some kind of basement. Upon entering the basement room, the girl immediately drew attention to the balls. Elena screams, because she knew about it, because they exist. Elena picked up one of the balls and said with pleasure that this was the most special of all the special balls, because these stones are mana-able. Turning to the courtier, the girl asks in surprise why they store such precious things in the basement. In response, he hears that this is an order from the Duke. The red-haired girl wondered if the Duke really hated everything related to magic so much, and this means that he is a hater of magicians. Looking at the stones, Elena still can't believe it, because these are stones of Abel's mana. Among durable stones, mana crystals are distinguished by their purity. They were first discovered by an ancient great magician named Adele. When the magical power contained in the mana stones ends, they become part of ordinary jewelry. Due to the fact that Abel mana stones can be constantly recharged with magical power, they are special among other crystals. Due to these characteristics, many aristocrats used Abel mana stones as interior decoration for mansions. They blocked enemy invasions and protected their families. Elena always wanted to have at least one copy, but it's simply impossible to get them. and the man who had a whole bunch of them just left them to rot in the basement. The girl thought that the Duke's enemies could have long ago taken away everything that was here and asked the courtier if he knew who cast magic on these mana stones. The man replies that 10 years have passed since that time, and unfortunately, he does not know this. Since the mana stone was created by one person and the magic was cast by a second, a third party cannot change the magical powers that have already been cast. If the magician who used the mana stone does not initially transfer control of magic, the able crystal will be just an ordinary jewel. Put your hand on the stone. Elena says that she cannot leave everything as it is. The girl asks Teresa who cast the spell on the mana stone Abel. The lady replies that she doesn't know because she was when it happened as a child. Elena wondered from whom she could find out this information. After all, the lady is now 17 years old. Teresa, looking at Elena, thought about her clothes because she had been wearing the same dress for a week. The girl wears the same dress, and probably all her outfits are the same. The lady with silver hair asks Elena. Apparently she really likes her dress. The red-haired girl replies that she is a rather thrifty person, and therefore does not change her outfits. Teresa wondered why, with such shabby clothes, she had a lot of expensive jewelry. The princess thought that it was definitely tasteless, and that she certainly couldn't say anything about it. But suddenly, Teresa got the idea to go shopping together. In the end, Elena agrees. In the store, the red-haired girl tried on many dresses, and every outfit aroused the admiration of Madame Teresa. The princess was very pleased and bought all the dresses that Mrs. Elena tried on. Arriving at the estate of the Duke of Mainfield, a tired, red-haired girl asked herself the question of who she was and what she was doing here. Trying on dresses exhausted Elena, and the girl thought that in any case, fighting enemies would be 100 times easier than shopping. After all, since birth, she has not been as tired as she is today. And at the same time, Elena decides that she is taking a day off. After taking a little nap, Mrs. Elena heard a scream, and she quickly took her jewelry and ran out of the room because she thought it was an attack. For a moment, the girl stopped at the gathering. She felt strange because she didn't see anyone, but she thought that not one person besides her had heard the scream. Teresa quickly determined from which room the scream came. She became interested in whose room this was and who was screaming. After thinking a little, the girl decided to open the door and entered the room, asking if anyone was there. In the room, Elena saw scattered things and a guy lying on the floor. Coming closer to the guy, the girl asks if everything is okay with him. But without hearing an answer, she thinks that this person is the Duke of Mainfield, and it turns out that this is his room. Elena does not understand why he is lying unconscious, and at the same time tries to wake him up. After looking around the room, the red-haired girl did not find anything suspicious and realized that there was no attack because the guy was not wounded. Approaching the Duke, Elena noticed that he was sweating very much, but this was the first time she had seen him from such a close distance. Suddenly, the guy opened his eyes, and Elena asked the Duke if he had woken up and explained that she just heard a scream coming from his room. At this time, the Duke dreamed of something terrible, and as if there was black smoke in front of him and a hand that was touching it. Cedric pushed this monster away from him with all his might and said that she could not kill him. The Duke grabbed Elena by the neck and began to strangle her violently. The girl doesn't understand what's happening and screams that he's a sick psycho and really planned to finish her off. Elena asks him why the Duke suddenly began to behave this way and why he does this. Crazy bastard, Elena screamed, and with all her strength she used magic to push Cedric away from her. The next morning the girl got up with the thought that she could not sleep a wink because she was terribly worried, and despite the fact that the worst thing happened was that she pushed the Duke away with magic. Elena was very worried that because of this incident the Duke might fire her. Indeed, in this case, she will again become a debtor and will plunge into eternal sleep only at the moment when the debts are finally paid off. The worried girl saw the courtier, and she thought that something had happened, and could it really be related to yesterday? Duke Cedric was sitting in his room, and suddenly a servant comes up to him and gives him an envelope containing an invitation from the Imperial family. The courtier asks the gentleman what he will do, and he gives advice that he should accept the invitation. Duke Cedric, without thinking for a long time, prepared a carriage for him. While going to carry out the order, the courtier saw Elena and asked what she was doing here. The red-haired girl replied that she was watching the view from the window and at the same time patrolling the area. Elena asks the man if the Duke is okay and didn't say anything about her. But the courtier replied that the Duke did not mention Mrs. Elena in the conversation, and the girl thought thank God because he doesn't remember anything. Teresa tells Elena that they are going to the Emperor's estate, because they accepted the invitation and all the people of the Mainfield family should go. The worried red-haired girl reflects that she's a little embarrassed to go there with the Duke. But thinking about the fact that in the Emperor's estate, there are probably many more expensive things than in the Duke's house, and it's high time for her to please her eyes. Seeing Teresa, the red-haired girl asks what could have happened because the mistress turned pale. The princess smiled and said nothing special happened, and at the same time asked the question why Elena did not wear the dress that she gave her. Elena replies that she cannot imagine what kind of battle will take place outside, and therefore it would be better for her to wear clothes that are familiar to her. A visit to the Emperor's palace is a very important and responsible day, so you can't let anything go wrong. Mrs. Teresa thinks that the girl probably didn't like her gifts either, and she shouldn't have done this. It turns out that she was the only one enjoying this shopping. But maybe that's not true, and she's wrong. The princess says that they need to hurry because their brother is probably already waiting for them. The red-haired girl, seeing the Duke, thought that he looked healthy, and that was very good. Sitting in the carriage, Elena reflects on what happened last night. But looking at the Duke, she realizes that he doesn't remember anything, and she doesn't understand at all what he's thinking about and why this cold-blooded man screamed yesterday while lying unconscious. And he suddenly began to choke her. When the Mainfield family arrived at the Born Imperial Palace, they were greeted and asked to wait as the Empress would arrive soon. Elena looked at the luxurious room with great pleasure and at the same time did not understand why they came here. The red-haired girl turns to Mrs. Teresa and asks who they should meet here. The doors open into the room and the Empress enters in a red dress with a white cape. He greeted the guests and said that he had not seen each other for a long time and thanked them for coming. Sitting at a large table, the Empress says that the aroma of tea is so pleasant and asks if they like it, because it was brought for her from the Ruthenium Empire and she serves it only for special guests. The lady in the red dress suggests starting a conversation because she has heard that lately there have been frequent attacks on the Duke's family. The Empress made a sad face and continues to say that they don't even imagine how much she worries about them. I ask the question, who can do such terrible things because it's so terrible? The Duke replies that he is grateful to her for her concern and asks if she could help them. And apparently, the people who attack them are somehow connected with the Imperial family. Cedric asks the Empress if she happens to know who it could be. The Empress answers, she is so scared that she is even afraid to guess. Looking at her, Cedric thought what a shameless liar she was. Turning to Teresa, the Empress says that the princess was probably very frightened because she heard that the girl was seriously injured. Coming closer to the princess, the Empress takes her by the chin and says that this is a precious body that the heir prince takes care of, and we must not allow it to suffer. But in any case, she is glad that everything ended well because everything is intact. Elena does not understand anything what is happening and what they are talking about. She silently watches them. The lady in the red dress looks at the red-haired girl and says that she has heard news that they have hired an exclusive magician, and apparently, it is the girl in the green dress. Elena replies that she is glad to meet you, and this is true because she is the exclusive magician of the Mainfield family, Elena Rata. The Empress looked at the girl with a cold gaze and said that she felt better because now she has one of the best knights of the Empire in the person of the Duke and a great exclusive magician. The lady in the red dress, addressing the red-haired girl, says that she is looking forward to her actions. Elena thought that if the Mainfield family was under her supervision, then no one would dare to approach, and replied that in any case, she would do everything in her power. Hearing this, the Empress smiled and said that the girl was so funny. Cedric, turning to the Empress, asks, because now she can tell why she invited him so suddenly. The Empress smiled and asked the question, do they really have a relationship in which they should meet only if there is any reason? The lady in the red dress says that when she heard that they hired an exclusive magician, she wanted to talk to them. After all, the place of the exclusive magician had been empty for 10 years. And after the previous Duke of Mainfield died gravely under mysterious circumstances, and the wizard of your family suddenly disappeared after that. Rowan comes into the guest room, and when Elena sees him, she remembers that this is the young gentleman whom she saved. Teresa ran up to the prince. He, turning to the Empress, says that he is taking the princess. The lady in the red dress says that she understands his desire to be with his bride, whom he has not seen for a long time. However, Teresa is her guest today, and he is being too rude. The prince asked for forgiveness and reports that, however, Teresa is now very weak after the attack on the Mainfield family, and the princess was very badly hurt, so he takes her away to rest a little. The prince, turning to the Empress, says that he hopes that she will treat all this with understanding. The lady in the red dress again made a sad face and said that all her preparations went to waste. Duke Cedric gets up from his chair and says that it's time for him to leave too, and that it seems to him that she found out everything she wanted. The Empress says that they have a lot of time, and she hopes to meet again soon. Walking behind the Duke, Elena heard him call the Empress a disgusting bitch. The girl asks the question what is happening here. Hurrying after the Duke, Elena saw the familiar face of a guy asking her what she was doing here. The girl asked the same question in response and named a guy named Therion. Since the guy did not want to answer her question, he says that he made a mistake. Suddenly, Therion was called by the Empress, and he quickly followed her. Elena saw Rowan and asked him if he was the crown prince, and that meant that Teresa was the future empress. The prince says he has never hidden who he is. And why is this so surprising? He asks the girl if there are still people who do not know the prince of the empire, and probably they should be surprised at such ignorance. Elena, concerned, replies that she was simply never interested in politics. The prince asks Cedric what he was thinking when he decided to come here, and in response, Cedric says that he had to come because the Empress personally invited him, and besides, he was interested in how much more shameless the Empress could become. Elena thought that Cedric was not trying to hide his hostility towards the Empress. And is she really the one attacking the Mainfield family? Suddenly, the red-haired girl remembers that Mrs. Tolt said something similar, but she listened to everything and doesn't remember anything. Elena says that the Empress she saw and heard today was how worried she was about the Duke's family. After all, it seemed to her that his mother was a very good person and asked whether this was true. I didn't hear an answer. The girl thinks that she is being ignored again. Helena, who was unfamiliar with the political situation in the Empire, was deceived by the mask of the Empress. However, she is completely different in how she looks compared to the Emperor. This strong woman is ready to do anything to make her youngest son the ruler of the Empire. Thus, the Empress is trying to deprive the Crown Prince of his status, weakening his power. That is why his fiancé's family is constantly in danger. However, even after Mrs. Elena became the exclusive magician for the Mainfields, the constant attacks and threats disappeared. Obviously, the Empress realizes how powerful Lady Helena is and is wary of her, but the Queen's ambitions will never fade. And perhaps she is biding her time to plan a more precise and powerful attack. Prince Rowan, turning to Elena, asks her to take care of the Duke's family and especially his bride. On the way home, the Duke asks the lady what kind of relationship she has with the Empress's magician. The girl thought for a minute because she saw such an expression on his face for the first time, and it seems to her that this is the first time he spoke to her. Elena says that Therion is her friend who lived with her in a magic tower from early childhood. However, several years ago, the magician quietly left the tower without saying a word. Seeing Cedric's calm face, the red-haired lady thought for a moment that now was the right time to ask him about last night. She suddenly quickly changed her mind because she pushed him away with magic. The Duke looked carefully at Elena's jewelry and remembered that he had seen a similar pebble on the floor in his room. The Empress asks Therion whether he is close to the Duke's exclusive magician. The magician thought for a moment and replied that he simply confused her with another person. The Empress, coming closer to the guy and looking into his eyes, says that he really thinks that he can hide something from her. The magician, leaning closer to her face, kissed her on the lips and thereby gained her confidence in himself. After the kiss, the Empress said contentedly that she believed him, but all her plans were ruined because of this brat of a magician. The woman, hugging the guy, continues to talk, asking the question of whether it is possible to just leave her like that, and he should know what to do. However, having arrived at the Duke's estate and getting out of the carriage, Elena thought about Cedric that he was an ill-mannered bastard. Upon entering the house, the red-haired lady worked all the while creating a perfect barrier of protection. Having finished the work, the magician Elena says that, as expected, this is her best creation, and her skill in creating a shield has clearly improved. Although she spent jewelry on him, looking out the window, the lady in the green dress thinks that using mana stones would be much better for Abel. After all, in order to maintain the barrier, she needs jewelry, which serves as her guide. The girl thinks that if she asks the Duke to provide her with jewelry, he will certainly do it, and that's why she will have enough of them now. Suddenly Elena, look at the door, remembered that this was the Duke's room, and she was next to her again. Coming closer to the door, The red-haired girl thinks that nothing will happen today, and leaning closer to the door, she hears nothing and thinks that everything will be fine. She shouldn't worry anymore, and it's time to go back. Elena opened the door to Cedric's room and thought that she was really going crazy, but she was still interested. Entering the room, the girl thought that there was no one there, but coming closer to the bed she saw the sleeping Duke, who, it seemed to her, was tormented by nightmares. Elena thinks that the Duke's expression is always very creepy, and maybe it's because he doesn't get enough sleep. After all, due to lack of sleep, people become harmful. In a dream, the Duke calls his father, and the girl remembers that Mrs. Tolt said something about the Empress and the mysterious death of the past Duke of Mainfield. Apparently, this was Cedric's father. Madame Magician realized that the reason for the nightmares was a long-standing event that was associated with the death of her father. Even though the Duke is an ill-mannered and arrogant brat, Elena used her magic to make his sleep comfortable. Leaving the Duke's room, the girl reflects that she had thoughts that she would never want to remember. Elena thought about the magician who disappeared without even saying goodbye to her. She was interested in how Therion became the Empress's magician. Due to the fact that there were no peers among the magicians, Therion became her first friend. However, he left the magic tower. After all, this boy has always been so mysterious and secretive. Suddenly, Elena saw a magician who addressed her and said that her barrier-creating magic was still weak. The surprised lady asks how he got here and what he is doing here. How did he get here? Because she didn't notice the intrusion at all. Therion replies because he is gay. He said a couple of seconds ago that her magic of creating a barrier is still weak. Hearing this, the magician Elena screams, "Does this brat really want to experience her pain magic?" The Empress's magician, turning to the girl, says that they have already had enough chatting about trifles and need to get down to business. Therion worriedly asks the redhead what she is doing with the Duke of Mainfield's estate. The angry girl replies that she should ask him about this because he was the one who invaded her territory. The magician screamed and again asked the question of what she was doing here. Elena says that she made a pact with the Duke's family, and therefore she is the exclusive magician of the Duke of Mainfield's estate, and he should know about this when he decided to come. And at the same time, the lady magician asks the guy why he works for the Empress. After all, she, knowing his character, that he does not like it when someone commands him. Therion insists that she leave here immediately. The girl replies that he is no one for her to talk to her like that. And besides, why would she leave this place? Elena forbade the magician to come close to her because now he is not a friend to her, having grown up with her in a magic tower, but an intruder who broke into the estate protected by her. Therion came closer to the red-haired girl and hugged her and said to get out of here because this is what he asks for. The worried lady magician asks the guy why he pretends to worry about her if he long ago escaped from the magic tower without saying a word. Elena says that whether she is an exclusive magician or not should not concern him. After all, having taken on this job, she understood that she would be able to pay off her debts, and there is no point in giving up such a good chance. The girl, screaming, asks whether this is dangerous, or the reason is that he works for the Empress. The magician says that it doesn't matter to him at all because he's just worried about her. However, he is ready to give money and pay her debt. Hearing this, Elena angrily demands that he get out of here before she hits him. Therion, holding his head with his hand, asks why she is so stubborn and how can such a stingy person refuse money. A quarrel ensued between the magicians. But in the end, Therion left and said that he had basically warned her. However, when the opportunity arises, let her return back to the magic tower. In the morning, the maid saw Mrs. Elena and was frightened because the girl was so pale, almost transparent. Madame Magician, after he left, all she did was strengthen the barrier and couldn't even sleep. The frightened maid, turning to Mrs. Elena, said, "And if she needs anything, let her call her." And she ran away out of fear. Since the morning, Madame Magician has had no appetite, but this is not like her. The girl was thinking about what happens when a person cannot sleep, and only after this can she understand the Duke. Sitting at the table, Elena overheard the maids talking about what they saw as the Duke smiled at them and wondered what could make him so happy. The maid Bess said that the Duke was like an angel descended from heaven, and they really want to see him like this. The magician Elena cannot imagine him as sweet and angel-like. She imagines him as a devil that even gives her goosebumps. Thinking about Therion, the girl remembered how, living in a magic tower, they were always at different levels. Of course, the magical power of each of them gradually grew. However, Elena still cannot believe that he overcame the boundaries set by her so easily. And this boy Therion was able to immediately find her, even taking into account the barrier installed by her, which is capable of hiding the place where the magical power comes from. He was somehow able to determine her location. The Lady Magician understands that there is a spy among the people who perfectly know the Duke's estate, and while she has such guesses, she cannot help but do nothing. Elena, entering the Duke's room, tells him that she wants to talk to him alone. Hearing this, the courtier replied that he was leaving them. Cedric asks Mrs. Elena for what reason she came. The lady replies that Therion came to her last night. The surprised Duke asks her if she is talking about the Empress's magicians. Elena says that she hates him so much that she would never admit it. Therion is a very capable mage with incredible magical abilities, but despite all this, finding her right away in such a huge mansion is very problematic. Besides, the barrier installed is capable of hiding magical power, and yet Therion easily discovered her. The Duke says that this could mean that the estate is a spy, and that is what she wanted to say. And there is still a possibility that she may turn out to be a spy. Hearing such accusations from her side, Elena screams and asks who he takes her for. Cedric calmly asks the girl if she thought that he would not suspect her. The Lady Magician claims that if she had turned out to be a spy, she would not have talked about Therion. After all, since he hired her, she simply follows the contract. As long as she gets paid, she will do her job to the best of her ability. The red-haired girl screams that this matter is her pride, and if he doesn't trust him 100%, then she will return the money and just go back to the magic tower. The magician Elena asked the Duke if he would trust her. The girl thought she was too rude. Now she realized that under no circumstances should she leave this place. The Duke, not expecting such a turn of events, says that he trusts her. Hearing this, the girl asks which of the people from the estate the Duke can trust unconditionally. After all, this is necessary in order to find a spy. Cedric thought a little and named the name Alfred, who works as the manager of the mansion and is the butler of the Mainfield family. Elena thinks that everything will become easier to find the spy, because the help of the butler will be very useful. When the Lady Magician said that she wanted to talk about mana stones and find out something, Cedric did not want to continue this conversation, explaining that he was very tired. Elena, continuing, claims that the mana stones could be useful, but the Duke demands that she leave because the conversation is over. Leaving the Duke's room, the red-haired girl thinks how strange this Duke is, but today he spoke more than usual. The Lady Magician understood that getting information about the mana stones from the Duke would be problematic. When the girl saw the butler, she thought that this was the only person the Duke trusted. Approaching Alfred, she says that she wants to talk about the mana stones, and she needs information about them. She asked if there was any problem with these crystals. The butler replies that he cannot tell everything and advises that she had better never mention the Duke's presence. A magician who uses these mana stones is associated with the death of the previous Duke. There is a limitation to searching for additional information in a magic book. In any case, at the moment, she knows that even if she wants to use the mana stones, it will be impossible until the last magician who used them dies. The name and age of the missing magician are unknown, because the butler never said a word about him, and Elena had one last way to ask the Duke personally about the missing magician. But this idea turned out to be impossible. After all, on the one hand, one can understand the Duke. The man who held the position of the exclusive magician of the Mainfield family probably enjoyed confidence. But that wizard suddenly killed Cedric's father. Reflecting, the red-haired girl realized that this actually fully explains to us why the Duke hates magicians so much. Sitting at the table, Madame Magician fell asleep. She had a dream that she lost a precious stone, which a frog found and swallowed. Rushing after the frog, the girl screams that it is a magical artifact and demands that the frog stand. The girl screams as the frog dared to steal her only jewel. The girl, chasing a frog, ran to the lake, and when she saw the water, she remembered her parents, who promised her that they would return soon. The girl can't breathe because she's scared, and she doesn't want to see all this. She cries and asks a question about what she should do. Sitting on the shore, a little girl asks for help. Suddenly, the girl hears for the first time a voice that tells her to close her eyes and follow him. This man's hand is so warm, and she wonders who this man is. Elena wakes up from the fact that she was already woken up by Teresa, who knocked on the room but did not hear an answer and decided to enter. The lady says that it seems to her, but that Elena had a nightmare and asks if she is okay. The red-haired girl reports that she dozed off because lately she has been very tired and asks the lady why she came. The princess says that she heard that in a few days, a banquet will be held at the Imperial estate to mark the anniversary of the founding of the Empire. Their family, of course, received an invitation, which means that Mrs. Elena is obliged to go with them. And as a member of the Duke's family, she must wear appropriate attire. Teresa of the girl shows the girl the dresses and says how beautiful they are. Holding a yellow dress, the princess claims that it will suit her face and asks what she thinks about this. Elena replies that in fact, she also thought this dress was the most suitable and, thinking about it, that the soul leaves the body. The lady magician tells the princess that she wanted to talk to her about jewelry, but only without unnecessary ears. After all, Elena still does not know who is a spy among the members of the Mainfield family, and it's too dangerous if someone finds out what her conductor is. Of course, Therion, who works for the Empress, knows the subject of her power, but despite this, she would not want to talk about her series to just anyone. Elena, asking the princess if they need to choose a suitable decoration for the dress. Teresa agrees with the girl. Left alone with the princess, the magician Elena asks her a question since the banquet is organized by the Empress, and they cannot know what she is planning. During their last visit, it seemed to her that they did not really want to be in the Imperial palace. The princess asks if she can do anything if she constantly avoids her. Continuing, she says that next to her is a powerful magician who has already saved her and her brother once. Since Mrs. Elena will be with them, she has nothing to fear. The princess asks Elena who will accompany her to the ball, and the girl replies that there is no need for this. Hearing this, the princess screams because this is impossible, and besides, she has a brother. Elena claims that she does not need accompaniment, so she asks to pretend that this issue was not raised. Teresa asks the girl if she could accompany her brother. After all, she will have to protect them, and therefore she should be as close to them as possible. Elena says that she thinks the Duke will be against it, but the princess tells her not to worry about it. After all, everything will be fine. Teresa, having told her brother about her plans, heard an objection from him. The princess tells her brother what people will think, and not about him, if he continues to go to every banquet alone. And at his age, he doesn't even have a bride, and he can't even imagine how the girls he constantly refuses suffer. Cedric asks why Teresa always worries about what others say. The Duke continues to say that this event should not be taken so lightly. After all, the attacks on their family stopped. But he is sure that because of this something terrible is approaching, and the magician Elena should be next to the princess. Teresa, objecting, claims that it is her brother who is an important representative of the Mainfield family, and if something happens to him, then she will suffer too. Since the Imperial Palace is a dangerous place, however, Rowan will be with her. And she doesn't think that the Empress would dare to do something absurd in front of him. The princess made a sad face and said that if he is wounded, she will not survive it. A few days later, a magnificent ball took place in the Borna Imperial Palace. Mrs. Elena, wearing a yellow dress, kept thinking about how uncomfortable she was. Coming out of the carriage, the Duke shook hands with the girl in the yellow dress, and she told him that she would accompany him to the ball properly. Entering the banquet hall and holding hands, the couple aroused surprise and questions among those around them, because no one knew what kind of girl was next to the Duke. After some time, no one even approached this couple. Elena thought what a relief it was because people weren't paying attention to her, and since she thought that because she came to the banquet with the Duke, all eyes would be on her, and how good it is that this is not the case. Cedric asks Elena that she's relieved that no one came to greet them. Probably, people simply don't think anything of it and don't consider it necessary to pay attention. Hearing this, the girl thought that she was simply invisible, and it turned out that they were all ignoring her. And she won't add anything, because these are aristocrats who have neither shame nor conscience. When all the guests have gathered in the banquet hall, and after that the main door opens, from which the crown prince of the Borna Empire and his bride emerge. After the arrival of the main people at this ball, music could be heard in the hall, and all the guests danced. Magician Elena, looking at the dancing aristocrats, thought that she did not feel anything strange, and she was wondering what the Empress was waiting for. A girl suddenly approached the Duke and, very shyly, asked if she could invite him to dance. Hearing this, Cedric, even despite the girl, refused her. The red-haired girl heard this conversation and thought how ill-mannered he was, because the girl barely plucked up the courage to ask him to dance, and he refused her. Elena wondered why this arrogant Duke kept getting invitations to dance from such noble ladies, and he continues to refuse everyone. A girl in a yellow dress advises the Duke to dance with someone, and she herself thinks that she is simply invisible, and in any case, she is not the Duke's real partner, and therefore she absolutely does not care whether he agrees to dance with someone or not. Herzen turns to Elena, says that he has a partner for dancing, and grabs her hand and leads her to the dance floor. The lady magician, turning to the Duke, asks what kind of suddenness this is. In response, Cedric asks if she can dance. The girl replies that the last time she danced was when she was still a child. Hearing the answer, the Duke says that's enough, and they began to dance. While dancing, the Duke complimented the girl, saying that she was doing well since she had not danced for a long time. She only thought that he was too close to her. During the dance, the Empress entered the hall, and Sir Ruhart immediately ran up to her and said that he was very glad to see her. Suddenly, a man with a mask on his face appeared in the hall, and he approached Elena to invite her to dance. The Duke heard about this and took a step forward, interceding with the girl. And turning to the man in the mask, he asked for forgiveness and said that this was impossible. Elena heard that the Duke answered instead of her. She says, turning to the masked man, that she accepts his offer. Leaving Cedric alone, the girl, dancing with the magician, asks him why he decided to disguise himself using magic, and whether he is doing this so that the Empress does not notice him. Max Rowan, instead of answering, says that he could not even think that she danced so well. The red-haired lady, hearing this, angrily says, "Let Therion not be a fool and speak to the point." The magician realized that he had been exposed and said that he was here to warn her. Elena asks him a question and says that the warning that the Empress's magician gives, and how can she know that he does not have any evil intentions? Therion claims that because he told her to run away, she decided to come to the Imperial Palace. After all, she can't be here and let her leave here immediately. Elena answers him because she already said that she is the exclusive magician of the Mainfield family. At the same time, the magician says that she should quit. Hearing this, the red-haired girl lets go of his hand and says that if he is going to continue this useless conversation, then she will stop dancing with him. Before she could move away, the girl noticed the Duke, who turned to Therion and said that they had already finished dancing and he was taking the girl from him. Going out onto the balcony with the Duke, the lady magician, sitting on a chair, took off her shoes and said that because of these dances she was so tired. The Duke asks Elena if she knows the person with whom she danced. After all, it was the Empress's magician. Cedric asks the lady what they were talking about. She replies that Therion asked her to leave her post as exclusive magician and return to the magic tower. The surprised Count asked me if her friend is so worried about his colleague, and apparently they were very close. Elena, sighing heavily, says that all this is in the past, and now Therion is nothing more than an enemy for her. Cedric says he thinks differently. The girl asks what he wants to say. Suddenly, the prince and Teresa join them and ask if they like the banquet. The prince says that Elena has no reason to enjoy the banquet, because she must ensure safety, and he thanks her for her work. Seeing a maid serving glasses of champagne, the prince offers to drink to Elena. Taking the glass away, Cedric tells the prince that he warned him not to do such things. Rowan defends himself by saying that he just wanted to diffuse the atmosphere. Elena, using magic, checked the glass and said that the champagne is non-alcoholic. They don't have to worry. The prince says with pleasure that he is great at choosing people and what a great guy he is for hiring Elena as an exclusive magician. Rowan asks Elena a question about the situation, whether she noticed anything suspicious. The girl replies that everything is quiet and nothing happened. Suddenly, the lady magician notices that the Empress's chair is empty and she has gone somewhere. Elena remembers what Therion told her that she should run away. Suddenly, everyone hears an explosion and fiery flames spread throughout the entire hall. The magician, Elena, quickly makes a defense and thereby saves the people she was protecting. After the explosion, the house was badly damaged. Cracks formed on the walls, which were filled with blackness from smoke. The prince gets up from the floor and asks what is happening because he doesn't understand anything. But having looked around, he realizes that an explosion has occurred. Concerned, Rowan looks down and asks the question of how this happened. All the people who were on the first floor, and yet they died. Elena, asking for forgiveness from the prince, says that the attack was unexpected, and therefore she did not have time to use protection magic on these people. The sad girl regrets that she realized about the attack too late. The prince, calming the girl, says that she is not to blame for anything. Rowan looks at the dead people and understands that most of the nobles are those who were close to the prince. After all, this is exactly what the Empress wanted. The Duke is agitated, saying that this is just some kind of madness, and he suggests that it would be better to leave this place as soon as possible. Suddenly, it was heard that someone was asking for help, and among these dead, there was a survivor. The boy, who was about 10 years old, asks for help and says that he cannot move his leg. The prince understands that he cannot help him, and turning to Elena, suggests that she use magic to help the boy. The lady magician sadly says that healing magic is beyond her control. After all, it can only be used by those magicians who have a suitable conductor of magical power, but even among them there are very few such magicians. Elena suggests finding a safe place, because even if she uses the barrier, it is not safe here. The prince says that he cannot leave them and just walk away. At that time, Cedric grabs the prince by the chest and screams for him to come to his senses. After all, now there is nothing he can do to help all these people. However, he must understand perfectly well whose fault all this happened. Elena thinks that she suspected that an attack might occur, but did not think that everything would end so sadly, and considering that the Empress committed such a terrible act, the girl is sure that she will not stop. Mistress Elena wonders if the jewelry she hid will be enough to prevent the attack. Seeing the jewelry on the bodies of the lying women, the red-haired girl got to work. Surprised, Cedric asks why she is doing this. The girl replies that if they want to live, then there is no other way out. All magicians have their own guides with which they can use magic. For Elena, jewelry is her guide, and this means that only with them she will be able to use magical power. The princess realized that this is why the lady magician wears so much jewelry. Elena reports that she is ready, and they can't waste any more time. The prince says that in this case, he will provide her with jewelry. Rowan, turning to the wounded guy, say that help will come for him soon and let him be patient for a while. Cedric suggests going to the estate. Without wasting time, however, the lady quickly got out of the castle. Elena was alarmed that it was suspiciously quiet outside, and it seemed to her that there was no one here. Having walked a little along the road, the lady magician confidently says that there is something there that is, and it is approaching. A few minutes later, knights appeared in front of them, seeing the prince and kneeling in front of him. The knights, turning to the prince, say thank God that he is okay, because they have been looking for him all this time, and now they have a chance to do it. Suddenly, the warrior takes a sword to attack the prince, but the duke prevents him from doing this because he was already ready to fight. And in this battle, he quickly defeated the knight. Elena, who was a little late because of her dress, thanks the duke. In response, he says she should use jewelry more sparingly, and here he can handle it himself. Madam Magician with great desire wants to tear the stupid dress. A few minutes later, the duke's base is attacked, and he does not have time to defend himself since there were 2 more knights. Elena comes to the aid of the duke with her magical power and tells him that there is no need for gratitude. The prince wonders why the Imperial knights attacked them. However, they need to establish their identities. The duke says that these people could pass themselves off as Imperial knights. When the prince arrived at his estate, he saw that all his servants had died. He says that the Empress has reached this place, and he will take revenge on her for everything. Suddenly, the lady magician heard a knock. It seemed to her that someone was hiding inside the closet, but she did not feel an evil aura. Opening the closet door, Elena saw a girl who begged to have mercy and not to punish her. Cedric tells the red-haired girl not to come so close to her. The prince replies that everything is fine because he is sure that she will not do anything wrong. Rowan, coming closer to the girl, says that he is glad because she remained alive. The girl says that she was cleaning as usual and suddenly heard screams coming from outside, and so she immediately hid in the closet. However, she was unable to see the faces of the attackers. Teresa, calming Maureen, says that she survived only because she did not meet those people. The red-haired girl says that in any case, now she doesn't have to worry about the jewelry if a battle suddenly breaks out. However, she had to wear the prince's clothes so that the jewelry would fit closer to her body. Elena claims that the jewelry is in excellent condition and it will help them a lot. After all, she had never seen such jewelry, and this is undoubtedly the best material for using magic. The lady magician says that enemies will not be able to get here because she has installed a barrier. However, she senses the very weak power of Abel's magic stones, as they were already used in the estate. The prince, turning to Elena in surprise, says that the stones have disappeared, and in fact this place was guarded by Abel's monocrystals. That is why the enemies were able to enter the estate. The magician Elena asks Rowan who had access to the crystals. The prince is angry because she suspects one of his people, and he screams that he will not tolerate such an attitude. Cedric turns to the prince and says that he must be careful, and he should be wary even of those people who are responsible for his safety. Because if this is beyond understanding, he must know that anyone can betray his faith. Rowan calmed down a little and said that besides him, The only one who has access to the mana stones is Chamberlain Tauber. However, he trusts him because Tauber is a faithful servant. And even if he betrayed him, then surely some inevitable circumstances arose. Elena says that she will personally check it, but it will be safe for all of them to stay here. Madam Magician, turning to Teresa, says that there is still magic left in her ring, and therefore, in case of danger, let her use it. Elena says that she is going to inspect the territory of the estate. Having heard this, Cedric offers to go with her, but the girl replies that it would be better for him to stay here, but the Duke does not even want to hear about it. The red-haired lady suggests coming up with some kind of code word, since the enemy can use transformation magic and pretend to be one of them. Elena suggests that when they return, they will knock 4 times and say their names. Walking along the corridor, the girl says that the estate is so unusually quiet, and turning to the Duke, claims that there is someone behind this door. Elena used magic to open the doors, and they saw the servants, who were very frightened. The girl asks them where the Chamberlain might be. One of the servants says that at the time of the attack, all the people fled, and he saw that the man they were looking for ran away towards the extension. Suddenly, the Lady Magician sensed an evil force and quickly used her magic to destroy the evil. On the body of the dead man, they saw a drawing that they had already seen. Elena, turning to the service, says that she will install a protective barrier so no one will be able to enter or exit until she returns, and let them feel safe. Following the red-haired girl, Cedric asks her if there might be someone else hiding among the servants, because he doesn't think the danger is over. Elena, calming him down, says that her barrier cannot be destroyed by an ordinary magician, and moreover, she did not feel the presence of evil forces. Therion broke the barrier last time. The Lady Magician says that she doesn't want to admit it, but Therion is a very powerful magician. However, wizards with such powerful magical powers are very rare. Besides, it makes no sense for them to kill ordinary servants. Suddenly Elena says help because she can't breathe. Cedric calms her down and asks her to close her eyes because he will guide her through. The prince remembers that day as usual. After meeting his mother, he went to his father. On the way, he met Mr. Calix, who also wanted to meet his father. Mr. Calix introduced him to his daughter Laurel, and it seemed to him that nothing was reflected in her empty eyes because this girl looked like a living doll. The prince recalls that, after this meeting, his mother suddenly weakened from illness and fell into eternal sleep. The girl doll was immediately named Empress. Her once empty eyes then burned with passion and ambition. And first of all, she wants to remove the crown prince from the throne and make her son emperor. Rowan, faced with all this, cannot shake off his despair. The prince's thoughts were interrupted by a maid who brought him tea and asked if he was in order. The maid says that she brewed tea from the flowers of the flowering plant, because he often drinks it because it helps him calm down. Looking at the tea, the prince remembers that his mother really liked this tea, and it was because of it that she always smelled like flowers. After all, that's why he loves him so much. Suddenly, the princess knocks the cup out of the prince's hands, which falls to the floor and breaks. The maid is furious, and at that time the prince quickly grabs her hand in which she holds the knife and screams, turning to her, "Let her stop and wake up." Maureen falls to the floor, and Rowan asks what made her do this, because he knows that it was the Empress who advised her. The maid looks at the prince and cries. The Duke, being with Elena in the forest, sees that she is trembling all over, and if she has to fight in the state, then they will not have a chance to win. However, the only way out is to hide in the dark until dawn, because if they stay here, then both will be in danger. The prince thinks about whether the enemies will be able to find them and attack. It is better for him to strike first. Addressing Elena, the Duke says let her wait for him here as he will return soon.